Hey, I am Tyler with Mosto Fitness. So I am a coach who works with racers off the bike remotely to help them race faster, safer, make training fit into their life, all those things. So if you're looking for tips and some tricks and kind of what it takes and what you need to do to achieve all those things off the bike to race faster, this is the perfect presentation for you. So before we even get into the interesting stuff, just a little bit about me and my history in sport and with science. I am Coach Tyler Gugemis. I've been a high performance remote coach in my 11th year now. I work with racers from literally all over the world remotely. I'm based in Michigan, so that's why I say from Michigan, but from Michigan to literally Singapore, we've got athletes spread out everywhere. Personally, I have a bachelor's degree in exercise science. I graduated with that, geez, like 12 years ago, and quickly got into the remote coaching business, helping racers, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And I race all types of endurance events. I've done triathlons, Ironmans, off-road triathlons, mountain bike races, running races, and of course, tons of dirt biking, which is what I am currently out of all those, I'm the deepest in right now. And I've raced all types of dirt bike races: motocross, enduro, sprint enduro, hare scramble, GNCC. But what I really like is the hare scramble GNCC. I personally enjoy that kind of mix of endurance, long racing, fueling, pacing, all of that. And I think I enjoy it because that's what I've always excelled the most at, for sure. A real quick history about me. Grew up racing motorcycles, and man, when I was younger, after a GNCC or a hare scramble on a Sunday, I mean, I'm like 18, 19 years old, and I was just toasted. I had nothing left in the tank at all. I would feel horrible. I couldn't barely drive home. I couldn't eat anything for hours. And then fast forward a couple years later, I went to school for exercise science, really understood how to train the body, fuel the body, help the body recover, and what a world of difference it makes. Here I am now, almost double the age I was then, and I feel completely different after I race. Obviously, when we race, we give it our all. We really drain the tank, so to say. And but man, now I feel spent, but I just don't have those horrible feelings and headaches I used to have, and just feel just completely deteriorated the next day. So hopefully through this webinar, you can pick up some stuff, learn some stuff here, and you don't have to suffer like I had to suffer in my early days of racing. Here's just a couple quick shots of me: National Enduro, Half Ironman World Championships, and then an off-road triathlon. Um, so there's just a little bit about me. So the four pillars of performance we're going to go over are strength, endurance, nutrition, and recovery. So with these four things, we can't just have one. We can't have strength without endurance. We can't have nutrition without recovery. We can't have strength without recovery. However you want to say it. All four of these pieces need to come together. We can't out train a poor diet. We can't train ourselves into a huge hole by going way too hard all the time. We need to recover. We could have excellent nutrition, but if we haven't trained the body properly for endurance, we're not going to be able to perform. So it really takes all the pieces, and we're going to talk about completing the puzzle and how each one of those pieces will come together for us here. And here is a great example. This is an analogy I give a lot. So we've got the cyclist, the MX racer, and the car racer. Now, I would say if we went through each of these, the cyclist, that's a little bit more human powered than performance. Obviously, a really good bicycle makes a big difference, but the human is really powering the machine, and they need to have a really strong body. They can get away with okay equipment. Then all the way to the right, a car racer, Formula One, I would say obviously you need to be a very skilled driver, but the car performance, that's a huge one. You can't have just whatever car. You got to have the ultimate machine. And I would say that's more machine-based racing. Now, in the middle, we've got the MX racer. And I think that's 50-50 split right down the middle. We have a high performance machine, and we need to have a high performance human. We can just go all in on our bike, get cone valves, have the sweetest motor built, use the absolute best fuel, be using VP fuel, But if we're not training our body, we're never going to be able to keep up with our machine. We're never going to be able to hold the lap times we want. We're never going to be able to have the performances we want. So I say in the middle, that's where we've got it split perfectly. We need a high performance machine and a high performance human. And that's what I'm talking about today is the high performance human side, because, like we can only race a machine for so long if we're not properly trained, and maybe we can have a strong beginning of a race, but we definitely want to also finish strong. So we're going to talk about all the things we can do off the bike to ensure that we're getting those performances. So first, let's talk about strength training. So working with a machine is very unique on a motorcycle. Strength is very specific to racing. I know there's various opinions out there of you want to do not bike specific work, you want to do bike specific work off the bike. I'm big on specific. So doing bike specific work off the bike. So movements that mimic the bike. And I'm big on that because not everyone gets a ton of seat time. And so we want to be maximizing our time off the bike. So when we're on the bike, we're strong and conditioned. So I'm big on those specific movements for strength training off the bike. So when we're on the bike, we're feeling good, we're feeling comfortable. We're not developing those muscles on the bike, or very minimal muscle development on the bike. And to maximize that fitness for motor-specific training, the exercises need to focus on primary movers, prevent muscle imbalances, multi-joint movements. We want to mimic the movements of the dirt bike, like I just said. We've got to include the core. That's a big one. And then periodization and purpose. And we'll go deeper into each of these here. So first, primary movers. These are the big muscle groups that do most of the work when you're racing. So just as a quick example here, we've got the first diagram. I'm pointing at the quadriceps. The next, we're pointing at like the deltoid, pec area, the chest. Third one, hamstrings, big muscle. Fourth, the core. That's a huge one. Core wraps all the way around our body as well. We're not just talking about, that Instagram six pack or whatever you want to call it. We're talking about the complete core all the way around the body. And then finally, the upper back as well. Another big one, racing and a big mover. So strength training, we want to prevent muscle imbalances. Muscles only pull shorten. Imbalances can create injury, and it's a key to work all muscles in the system. So a perfect example here is the bicep and tricep, because like I said, our muscles, they only shorten. So if we want to pull our fist up towards our shoulder, that's going to be contracting our bicep. If we want to straighten our arm from our shoulder and go back, like take our hand back down to our hip, that's going to be the tricep. And so it's important that we work both sides of a muscle. One thing I see sometimes is racers have far too developed back muscles and a weak core. So the back's really strong, but the core is weak. And that's from, not properly training, maybe just doing time on the bike. And then we've got a big muscle imbalance, and we have one side working too hard and another side that's way too weak, which can pull on our muscles, can pull on our hips weird, can make muscle imbalances, give us a great chance of injury, reduce flexibility and mobility. So we want to make sure we work both sides whenever we're working a system. And then multi-joint movements. So these are movements that use more than one muscle group. They promote balanced muscles, and they're great for efficiency. So for example here, this guy doing a squat, you can see kind of all the highlighted muscles in his body. So you can see we're using both sides of the legs. We're using the front and the back of the core here for sure, because he's stabilizing his body. So it's a good movement to do when we want to make sure to prevent imbalances. So there's a time and a place for everything. But like, for example, if we do leg extensions on a leg extension machine, we're working our quadriceps. Well, then we need to go to a machine that would do leg curls to work our hamstrings as well, because we don't want that muscle imbalance. So like, for example, this one's working both sides with the up and down movement, the hamstrings and the quadriceps. But if we were just going through machines at a gym, we'd want to make sure to work both sides to not create a muscle imbalance. And these type of movements, these multi-joint movements like pictured here, these are really good for efficiency. This is a big one for us at Mosto Fitness. People are just so busy. They have so much going on. We don't have a ton of time. Why don't we get the best bang for our buck for the time we have to train, and make sure we're working multiple muscle groups when it's applicable and appropriate, just to save some time and not just go through a bunch of single movements, but something like this that uses multi-joints, just to be able to get in and get out quicker and get on with whatever else we got to get done that day. So like I said, starting up talking about strength, we want to mimic the movements of racing. Body position and strength work to mimic being on the bike. So just two really simple examples here. You can measure the width of your handlebars. And when you do push-ups, making sure you've got your hands the width of your handlebars. So we're developing the pec and upper back and everything, just like we would when we're racing. Really good example. And then another one that I like is same deal, measuring the width of your foot pegs. And so when you're doing squats or hamstring curls, making sure that you've got your hips at, your feet at the right width. So for example, the woods guy on the right here, you can see, right, we kind of got to squeeze through those trees. Well, let's make sure we've got our upper body in the right position when we're doing push-ups. And then on the right, we've got the motocrosser on the track and some gnarly deep sand, something that I definitely do not excel in. But you can see, right, he's kind of forward on the bike, kind of like a forward attack position. And we definitely want to make sure that, when we're doing some movements, we've got our feet at the correct width. And now with anything I say here, there's always another example. And we want to make sure to develop our body, so that the muscles are strong. So sometimes we have our racers do movements where we've got a wider stance, a more narrow stance, push-ups at different angles. But when we're just doing, these kind of general movements, squats, hamstring curls, push-ups, get those measurements. It's going to help develop those muscles exactly how we have them on the bike. All right, now the core. This is a big one. This ties it all together. Regardless of sport or daily activity, many have core imbalances causing issues with range of motion and strength. So we see this a lot, and oftentimes an improperly developed core from just a person's job or what they do all day, standing, sitting, whatever, could have a muscle imbalance where the back muscles are stronger around the core, or the front muscles are stronger. Sitting a lot sometimes can cause hip mobility issues, which tie into the core. So we definitely want to make sure we're developing our core and we're working the whole system, front, back, and sides. The core connects the upper body to the lower body. So we just want to make sure that, we're really connected to the bike. Our hands planted on the handlebars, our feet planted on the foot pegs, and then the core tying those two together. So we're able to move around on the seat, make reactions to the bike, keep our center of gravity over the bike. And the core is going to help do that. And I think this racer here is a great example. Right now, it's like some hard enduro scenario here, but he's going up over this rock ledge, right? And he's probably doing everything he can to keep his forward on the bike, not slide off the back. So he's really got that core engaged. And then I'm sure once he gets over that, there'll be some type of acceleration into braking. And once again, he needs to be able to use his core to stabilize himself on the bike from sliding too far forward or backwards. So the core is super important. Now, periodization. For proper strength training for any discipline of off-road racing, we need to include specific loading and recovery of the muscles. The purpose of the training is to improve movement on the bike above all. And so with that, we want progression, recovery, progression, recovery. And you can see, for an example here, we're building, then we recover, we build, we recover, and we build. And this is key. We just can't burn the match at both ends all the time. The body needs recovery. We need to build up stressors, do a little bit of overcompensation, then let the body recover, and then build up, do a little bit of overcompensation, and recover. And this is the best method for ensuring that your body is adapting to training and recovering. I feel like sometimes we might feel like, oh, we're not doing enough when we go easy, or we're not like really giving it our all. But really, time and time again, the scientific method has proven for periodization, this is the best way to do it. And in general, what we do at Mosto Fitness is 3 build, 1 recover. Sometimes for much older racers, 60 plus, we do a 2-week build, 1 recover, to help their body just adapt and recover more. But in general, it's a 3 build, 1 recover. And this is for strength and endurance work, which we're going to talk about endurance next. So yeah, endurance, anaerobic and aerobic conditioning are key. So with and without oxygen. So kind of like easy, moderate, or really, really hard efforts. And now there's lots of ways you can do, your cardiovascular work, your aerobic and aerobic endurance work. A couple of really popular examples we have at Mosto Fitness is first indoor riding. This is a really popular one because once again, so many people are so busy. Have a trainer set up in your house, you can get it done. It's not always the most exciting, but it's very efficient. We can get really specific training, and there's no chances of out on the road, flat tires, traffic, all the things that come with road riding. Next would be rowing. Rowing is a great one, full body movements. Definitely get a nice high heart rate, and we are able to hit our zones very well on a rowing machine. And then finally, mountain biking. Mountain biking is a popular one because we can't always get seat time on our dirt bike, and sometimes going out and hitting the mountain bike trail is a more efficient way to get out and get some ride time in, and the movements mimic those of dirt biking. So you kind of build some cardiovascular strength, endurance, some handling skills, some better skills at placing your wheel, and then those translate to the bike. And then also there's always running as well. Not everyone loves running, but one thing I personally love about running is the simplicity of it. You just really need a quality pair of running shoes, a good pair of running shoes that fit you, and we can head out pretty much anywhere, anytime, and get some running miles in. So one thing that happens is that when an athlete is doing their aerobic work, they spend too much time in the gray zone, and their body really never properly adapts. So what the gray zone means is you're not going easy enough for it to be recovery or endurance, and you're not going hard enough for it to really help your body adapt, really those hard threshold efforts. That gray zone is this area where you went out, you feel like you gave it a good effort. It wasn't easy, it wasn't all out, and you feel like you accomplished something. But what happens is when we spend too much time in that gray zone, just repeating this time in this effort, our body doesn't really adapt. We need all types of different stressors. We need really easy recovery, like zone 1, which is essentially like a pace that you can pretty close to talk a full sentence. Then we've got zone 2, endurance. You can speak a couple words at a time, but full sentences are kind of hard. That's an effort you could, in theory, do for hours and hours. Then we've got zone 3, those tempo efforts, which is kind of like what the gray zone would be, but when done properly, we're doing intervals at zone 3. Then we have zone 4 and 5, which these are really hard efforts that last minutes and then seconds. So all the zones are important to help your body adapt properly and to make you more cardiovascularly efficient for racing. So training intensities and durations need to replicate racing to a degree. A good example is if you're racing like GNCC or hare scrambles, it's about a 3-hour race, maybe, depending on where you're at. And we want training to replicate that. So we would, in theory, want to spend 3 hours on a bicycle or rowing or whatever the sport of choice is when we can. There are, of course, exceptions here if you're racing motocross or sprint enduros. So we're racing, 10 minutes at a time. Well, we do want to spend more time than 10 minutes doing aerobic work. We'd want to do kind of like that zone 2 that can speak a couple words at a time, could go for hours type of feeling. We'd still want to do like an hour, 90 minutes or so, maybe a little more if we have the time of that zone 2 work to really help our body adapt and develop everything that all the advantages zone 2 has that translate across all the zones, and then of course translate well to racing, to making our motor more efficient. So here's examples of endurance, how to properly aerobically train the body. So first in the top, this is an example of a zone 2 ride. This is from a racer I work with on a trainer, so like on the indoor bike. But essentially they warmed up and then they just held a consistent effort for the whole main set duration and then cooled down. And this is like that zone 2 aerobic work that you can speak a couple words at a time. This just really helps make the body more efficient. This work is never that exciting, but when you really adhere to the correct efforts or zones, the adaptations work across everything. So making you a stronger, faster racer. Then on the bottom left, this is a heart rate example of tempo. So tempo, zone 3, this is an effort that's pretty tough but sustainable, and doing intervals of this helps your body buffer lactate more. So essentially you can kind of prolong that burn feeling, that muscle feeling, in the simplest sense is what zone 3 work helps do. And then the bottom right, oh, we got the intervals. So this is like going really hard and really easy. And notice on the bottom right, the polarization of efforts, as in it's really hard, then it's really easy. It's really hard, it's really easy. And so what this racer's doing here, we got to warm up, and then they're basically doing like a 2 minute max effort and then recovering for 5 minutes, a 2 minute max effort, then recovering for 5 minutes. And that's really key. They're going all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom with their efforts. And that once again helps that body adapt, helps that body ensure that it's going to adapt and react to stressors better on race day. So all three of these are important with consistent training, and each one has a specific purpose for us. So now here's just an endurance example. This is two GNCC examples of a racer I work with. So the top one, first early in the file, I think maybe they had their heart rate monitor or watch data started before they got to the starting line, but you can see where the race really took off here. And then, yeah, so this is right when I started working with this racer, had a GNCC, and you can see the race starts there, maybe 20 minutes in or whatever. I don't know what happened here in the beginning, but starts 20 minutes in, and the first 30 minutes or so, they're able to hold a really, really good high effort. And then as the race goes on, heart rate just drops off and drops off and drops off and drops off. And part of the issue here was they didn't have a developed aerobic system. They hadn't really trained properly, and so they couldn't sustain the effort that they wanted to. Here early on, this is like the effort the racer can hold, that he can handle. Like he can go fast on the bike, he can feel good and control on the bike, but only for so long, and then things just start to wear out, and he's got to just slow down a little more and a little more and a little more. Now, fueling, recovery, all of those things also come into play here, but the main thing with this racer was definitely we did not have a strong aerobic base, and we had not developed those zones. So there's the first example working with them. Then this was one of the last GNCCs of the season. I know it was not, it wasn't this year, it wasn't the Ironman GNCC. I think it was the round before that. I think it was 2 rounds to go. And yeah, here's a great example of how much better their fitness had improved, and they were able to hold their race efforts. You can see basically from the time the race started, keeping the heart rate nice and high, able to adapt to stressors and come back. We see a couple really high spikes here, but after those spikes, heart rate able to recover and get back into race effort. You can see that multiple times. So all that proper training paid off, and they were able to maintain their race effort for the whole duration of the race, which is our ultimate goal. We want to be able to go as fast on the first lap as we can and go as fast on the last lap. All right, now nutrition. So this is something that I feel like I always get a lot of questions on. So I'm going to go into detail here, and we'll talk the specifics of each different aspect of training here with nutrition. So first, fuel. On our dirt bike, we've got gas. For the human body, for racing, carbohydrates are our ideal fuel. So there's carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Carbohydrates are what's really going to give us the fuel. They're stored in our muscle and liver, and we need to supplement with them during longer races. So just consider this. Fueling is super important, and it's very specific to each of us. So with your dirt bike, do you ever guess how much oil to put in your bike? Do you ever just guess the torque spec when you're doing a top end? Do you ever start a race with an empty tank of gas? I'm sure all those answers are no. We've got the specifics. We know exactly what thing we like to have for oil on our bike. We know exactly our gas tank, how much we need, and we know the torque of stuff when we're doing important work to our bike. We're not just winging it. Our body is the same. We need to know how much fuel we need. We need to make sure that we're putting in the correct amount of fuel for ourselves. And we just don't want to leave anything to chance. We want to test all these things while we're practicing, while we're training off the bike. So then race day, it's like, wow, we know exactly what to take. Our gut, it knows what to accept, and we're ready to go. And one thing I feel like a lot of racers will skip breakfast because they say they have a nervous stomach or an upset stomach. They can't handle breakfast. And that's really hard on you to be able to expect everything out of your body with no fuel in the tank. This picture is the perfect example. If the first thing a racer ate during the day was some dirt like this, we're way too far behind on fueling. We should have 8 hours before the race and had a nutrition strategy leading up to that starting line. So first, nutrition before. Now, this is really general because it depends on you and the type of racing you're doing. But breakfast, we're looking at having breakfast 1.5 hours to 4 hours before competition. Calories needs depend on the length of the race. So a longer race, you need a bigger breakfast further before. A shorter race, you can have a smaller breakfast closer to the race. Really specific. So, for example, if you're doing something like um, a long race, like a hare scramble, enduro, GNCC, something that's hours and hours of racing, that's where we'd want to have a bigger breakfast further away. And it's the idea behind having it that bigger breakfast further from the start is it needs more time to digest. So a big breakfast takes more time. We'll do it further away. Now, some racers, for example, for a 3 hour race, they can have food 2 hours before. Another racer, that same race, would need to eat 3 to 4 hours before because of just how they feel. It takes how long it takes for stuff to digest. So you've got to find what works for you. For shorter, more intense races like motocross or sprint enduros, that's where we want to have a smaller breakfast closer. We don't need like a huge topped off tank. So as long as we fuel properly in the days leading up, race day, we can eat maybe about an hour and a half before the race, a little lighter, a little smaller, and we'll be ready to go. The keys to your pre-race breakfast are we want high carbohydrates. So like I said, carbohydrates, that's what fuels the muscles and our liver. So we want high carbohydrates to really help top off our system. And this isn't like an excessively crazy big meal, but it's big enough that it's going to fill you up, fill your tank, and something that you'll be able to supplement with throughout the day, whether that's between motos or fueling like during a hare scramble or enduro between sections or at your gas stop or with a hydrator. So we've got that big breakfast, but it's not like we're not going to go like insane overboard. We're just going to have a bigger, high quality carbohydrate breakfast. And then we want low fiber. Fiber, really good for us day in, day out. Race day, not so much because it slows down digestion. And ideally, we want an empty stomach when we are racing. So look for lower fiber options just to help facilitate digestion and ensure that gut is empty and our muscles are fueled when we hit the starting line. And then also fluid intake is important. Kind of like I touched on, you want to make sure you're properly fueling your body in the days leading up with food, while also with hydration. Hydration starts a couple days before your race, but race day, you can go for a little bit more of a liquid carbohydrate breakfast if you have a really nervous stomach. Good way to get that fuel into your body and a good way to ensure you're properly hydrated race morning. So here's some examples of what you could have during breakfast. Oatmeal, apple in a bar, some type of pancake or waffle, a bagel with peanut butter, smoothie, some granola, a little bit of nuts. Like I said, we're looking for primarily carbohydrates. A little bit of fat and protein is okay. We just don't really need a ton of it before because those things take a little bit longer to digest. And we really just want to make sure we have an empty gut and a fueled up body. And I'll just, of course, once again, run back to every racer is different. What someone you know takes or what you read worked for someone else might not work for you. Maybe you need a little less protein, maybe you need a little more protein, maybe you need a little more fat to help curb your appetite before the start. You know, it's all very individualized. So with this, it's important that you test what works for you and keep notes of what's working for you so that as the race season progresses or year progresses, you know what's working or what's not working and what adjustments you can make each time you race. So nutrition rate before the race. Once again, I'm just going to keep going back to this. It's just so individualized. But ideally, we want to have a snack 20 to 30 minutes before the race. The closer to the race start, we want to rely on liquids and small snacks. So going back a couple slides to that breakfast, right? That's when we were eating hour and a half to all the way up to 4 hours before the race to ensure everything in our body digested, our gut was empty, and our muscles were ready to go. Now close to the race, we can have a little snack if you feel like you're needing it. Just a little something to just give you one more little boost, a little bit of calories to get you ready to go. So I would say keep it simple. Sports drink, chomps, which are like these little, almost like a gusher there in the middle, or all the way to the right, like a gel or a banana. So all of these, we're talking around 100 to 200 calories at most. You don't need a lot when you've properly fueled up. This is just like one last little go to get your body ready. For me personally, I'm big on sipping some sports drink and having a gel. I feel like that works well with me. Closer I get to the start, no matter how many times I've competed in my life, which is probably almost 1,000 different starts now for different events, I still feel the same, a bit of nervousness no matter what it is. So I like liquid right before I start, and that's going to be some type of sports drink I'm sipping on and a gel. Now, nutrition daring. So if you're doing a long endurance event, hare scramble, enduro, we need to fuel daring. Our body can only store so much. So you had that proper breakfast and that um, helped you be topped off, but we're never going to be able to replace what we're burning while we're racing, and we're going to diminish those stores that we built up while we're racing. So it's important to make sure you're taking in calories while you're doing long endurance events, through a hydrator, through gas stops, through restarts at enduros. We want to make sure we've got some fuel. So 30 to 60 grams per hour is a really rough estimate. I mean, that's a huge range. But it's important that you're just making sure you're getting something in. And then we also want to be having 5 to 10 ounces of a 5 to 8% carbohydrate electrolyte drink mix every 15 to 20 minutes, or supplement some bars or gels at a fuel stop, or grabbing a water bottle when you're going by, whatever it may be. But we need to make sure we're fueling during the event. Now, that 5 to 8% carbohydrate electrolyte drink mix, pretty much any sports drink you buy is already set to that. So if you look at sports drinks, if you buy like a powder bag of sports drink, the way the instructions they have on the back, how they want you to mix it, is going to take it to that amount. And this 5 to 8%, the science behind it is that's the rate at which our body can absorb the calories and the electrolyte the most efficiently. So make sure when you're getting a sports drink, if it's something that you're mixing, I always suggest mixing it to the manufacturer's suggestions. If I just went and grabbed like 3 different bags of sports drinks I have right now, each one, it's going to be a different amount, how many scoops or ounces I put in the drink for each brand. So just pay attention to that, because we want your gut to be able to absorb what we're giving it, not it just sitting in there like a big heavy weight or not while we're racing. And we want your body to absorb it the most efficiently possible. Now, if you're racing motocross or sprint enduros, it's important to make sure you have a fueling plan between those motos. So you want to make sure that you're getting something in that's going to help you recover from the race you just did and prepare you for the next. Straight program, split program, it can be so variable from the time your next race is, how many classes you're racing, whatever it may be. So above all, just make sure that you're fueling your body, you're getting something in after those motos, and you're getting your body prepared for the next one. You're staying hydrated. And once again, this can just be so individualized for every racer. But my suggestion is, if you're racing, a motocross or sprint enduro, and you've got 60 to 90 minutes between motos, I would just make sure to have like 150 to 300 calories. That's a really general range, but something with a little bit of protein to help you recover, and then carbohydrates once again to fuel you up. So just like I keep saying, keep notes, find out what works for you, because what works for someone else is not going to work for you 9 times out of 10. All right, so just some general nutrition recommended strategies for when you're out training off the bike, when you're racing, when you're riding on the bike. Under 1 hour, 5 to 10 ounces of that 5 to 8% carbohydrate electrolyte drink mix, or water with a gel. So we're staying hydrated, and we're getting some calories in either one of those 2 situations. 1 to 2 hours, we want to make sure we're still having 5 to 10 ounces of that carbohydrate electrolyte drink mix every 15 to 20 minutes, or 2 gels per hour and some water. Either way with these, it's about just staying consistent with it. We don't want to just at 45 minutes or 1 hour consume it all. We want to start fueling early and consistently make sure we're getting in the calories. Just like everything else, like with the bike, we got the fuel injector. It's just a constant drip of fuel or a shot of fuel. With our body, the same thing. we want to make sure we're giving it that shot of energy or that shot of fuel consistently throughout time, not draining the tank and then hoping that a large consumption will top it back off. That's not quite the way it works. If we have small amounts frequently, our gut's going to be able to handle that. A big thing with when we're racing, for example, our heart rate is really elevated. The blood is shunted away from our stomach to help our working muscles. And so we want to make sure that we're giving our stomach something that it can handle and it can absorb, because there's not as much blood in there to absorb everything and help pull that energy and get it to working muscles. When we're racing, also two big factors. Our brain, our blood, our brain has less. It sounds like I'm working out right now. I have no words. There's less blood to our brain and to our stomach. So simple decisions are harder, and our stomach can't absorb as fast. So making sure you have a plan and you know what works for you is important, because decision making in the moment can be very hard. That's if you're out there doing a long endurance race, or if you're racing motos and you're trying to get all that stuff sorted between motos. Make sure you already have a plan in place, because decisions become harder with fatigue and with exercise. And then finally, over 2 hours, constantly sipping on the carbohydrate electrolyte mix, having a gel every 45 minutes. That's just a good rounded example. You've got to find what works for you. But above all, with all of these, we can't have nothing. We got to make sure we're having something. Now, post-race, this is super important for racers. Let's say, for example here, I like to think that training or racing starts with the fueling before you start, and then the day ends, the session ends, whether that's training or racing, when you have completed your recovery nutrition. So when you end your training session, or you shut off your bike and put it on the stand or load it up, I would say the day is not over until you've properly fueled your body. So super important for those doing multiple races in a one day, like sprint enduro or motocross. We need to make sure we've got that post training racing nutrition to help us recover from the current moto and get ready for the next, like I said, talked about in the last slide. And then ultimately, we want to feel better faster, like I opened up with. I used to just feel horrible after races because I didn't fuel properly before. I definitely did a very poor job fueling during hare scrambles and GNCCs. And then afterwards, I just felt so crummy, I couldn't eat. So I was just taking something depleting it more, and then it just, when I had nothing left, I couldn't even put anything in because I felt so horrible. So you want to make sure you're getting something in after. It's really important that you get it in within 30 to 45 minutes. That's when glycogen replenishing occurs. And so we can race faster and safer. So you really want to make sure after training, after racing, you're getting that fuel in within that window. There's increased blood flow to muscles, and enzymes that produce glycogen are more active. So if you do it outside of that window, it's just going to kind of like normally refuel your body, whatever your body needs. But if you do it inside that window, that's when we're going to help our body recover faster and adapt quicker. And especially for those sprint enduros and motocross races where we're going back out pretty shortly, it's really important because there's only so much of a window that we can just help the body feel better, get back out there, feel better, get back out there. So post-race nutrition, our goal, carbohydrate intake within 30 to 45 minutes of racing, and another high carbohydrate meal snack 2 hours later. So it's like you get done, you're exhausted, you just want to sit down. Well, make sure you get something in. For me personally, what I found works really well is like a somewhat frozen protein smoothie, either something I pick up from the store or something I make before the race, because I find it's really easy for me to consume. Even if it's a cooler day racing, that cool kind of like slushy taste, I feel like it just feels really refreshing. It's easy to get down. And then within 2 hours of the race, make sure to eat a real meal or snack. Now, when you get done racing, if you can get like a real meal in, go for it. I've always kind of struggled with that, but getting something like a real meal in within 30 to 45 minutes, just as beneficial. We're looking at an intake of about 0.5 gram of carbohydrate per pound. So that's a little bit of math you can do to kind of get an idea there. And we want to include some proteins post-race. So three a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio of carbohydrates to proteins. And this doesn't have to be like crazy scientific. What I like to do is just like look at my plate. You get, if you said 3 to 1 or 4 to 1, I could just divide the plate into that many sections and look, this much is carbohydrate, this much is protein. There we go. I'm good to go. I'm doing everything I can for my body to feel better, recover after this race, and get ready for the next one. And then finally, it's important to replenish fluids. You can lose a lot when you're out there racing. If we look at other endurance sports compared to motocross, we look at like runners, cyclists, whatever it may be. They just have on some little shoes, little shorts, little singlet top, and that's it. When we're racing dirt bikes, we're achieving the same heart rate levels that they are. We're working all of our muscles of our body, and we're covered in gear. I mean, if you just look at lower body, you've got this big boot on, then maybe you got some knee braces, then you got on pants. And then maybe you have on even full length leggings under as well. So you're really covered. I mean, that's a lot of layers. So our body is definitely sweating because it's working hard. And then upper body, same deal. We're kind of trapped there. You got on a hydrator and then maybe some type of a chest protector. And then finally, we got on a helmet. A cycling helmet, only covers a little bit of the head. A motocross helmet covers your whole head, and then you also have goggles. So we're definitely getting warm. We're losing a lot of fluids. You need to make sure you replenish them. Now let's talk about recovery. We've got active recovery and passive recovery. So first, active recovery. These are like zone 1 activities. So you can speak full sentences. This is as simple as going for a walk, doing like the easiest ever bike ride. Like I like to tell my athletes, you're going so slow that you're embarrassed. You want to wear a mask because you don't want anyone to know you're out there cycling or running this slow. It can be yoga, it can be foam rolling, stretching. It's something you're doing actively to help the body. And then there's passive recovery. So this is doing nothing, but it's doing it while it's doing nothing. You're making sure to purposely do it, like you're planning to do it. So, for example, sitting, laying down, making sure you've got your legs up, sleeping, taking a nap, wearing compression, like in the bottom here, wearing some compression boots. If you've seen these or heard of these, I've got a pair sometimes and I find that they work great just because I'm always like moving around doing way too much. And if I put on these boots, well, I'm stuck there for one session. I'm going to actually sit. So I'm going to get the benefits of the compression therapy it does, but I'm also going to actually sit and relax. So it's kind of like a double win. So recovery is really important. It's something you can't skip. I feel like so many racers want to try to burn the midnight oil, burn the candle at both ends, and that stuff only lasts for so long. You really need good recovery. And if you're a younger racer, you can get away with a little bit less recovery. But if you're a little bit older of a racer, if you're in your 30s or beyond, you absolutely cannot skip this. It's not going to work out. A younger racer, you can get away with it a little bit, but you're not going to recover the way you want. An older racer, it's going to come back to bite you every time sooner than you think. So make sure you're doing recovery days. I can tell you at Mosto Fitness, we have very few athletes that train every day that don't have a rest day. And every single one of them, no matter how many days they're training, they have one active recovery day where we have very easy session and a mobility session or a yoga session. So something easy like zone 1, riding, cycling, running. It's just a really low effort. You can speak full sentences. And then some type of another session like a yoga session or a mobility session where we're working the body and moving around different ways to help facilitate recovery. And then sleep is a big one. So getting under 7 hours of sleep as an adult or 8 hours if you're under 20 is diminishing returns. So I know I try to really be mindful of this and not do any infinite scrolling at night or watch something because usually the next day I couldn't even tell you what I watched at night. So I know getting to bed is going to do me better. It's going to help my body recover. The body does a lot of work while we're sleeping, so we need to make sure to put those hours in so our body does recover. And one quick bonus, just talk about mindset, the winning attitude. Every race, no matter how good or poor it goes, should be viewed as a learning experience. I can tell you, I've worked with a lot of athletes all over the years. all types of different racing, all types of different events. And the ones who always seem to do the best can always take a negative and turn it into a positive. They can do that while they're racing, and then after the race, they can do it again. They can take and say, well, today didn't go good, but I learned this, this, and this, and I'll apply that next time. And I see these racers with these attitudes just year after year get better and better. So make sure you've got the right mindset. Before you're racing, do simple visualization. We don't really know what's going to happen out there. I think that's one of the fun things about racing. But making sure that you visualize, your performance, what's going to go right, how you're going to handle different situations. If you're racing motocross, you see the track, the track. Take yourself mentally through all the lines of the track, like literally just lay down in your rig and close your eyes and just take yourself from the starting gate all the way around a lap, and how you're going to hit each line, how you're going to hit each jump, how you're going to handle each piece that track has to offer. It's really going to help. Positive affirmations. This is a huge one. If you say you can't, you cannot. I've seen this time and time again as a coach. You keep those positive affirmations. You tell yourself you can do it. You believe in yourself that you can do it. You're going to really help yourself perform. And then kind of going back to what I said in the beginning, view challenges as an opportunity. Everything about racing is tough. The situations we're put in are tough. It's all very challenging. Not a lot of people are willing to take these types of risks racing, and really the challenge of any type of racing, whether it's racing hours to minutes and everything in between. It's very challenging. And so you want to view every challenge as an opportunity, because if everything sucks and everything's hard, well, then you're not having fun. So view challenges as an opportunity. All right, and that's it. So if you have any questions about anything you saw here, you can email me, Tyler, mastofitness@gmail.com. You can check us out online on our website. And yeah, see you guys at the track.